Welcome to Around the World on 8 Plates. In this series, we're going to visit different countries and introduce these countries to you by providing information regarding itinerary. We're also going to teach you how to cook signature dishes from these countries and interview locals from these countries so that you can have a better understanding of what these countries are all about. So join me, your host Jojo Tang, as we go around the world on 8 Plates. Presented to you by National Taiwan Normal University Common Core Education Committee Foreign Language Education Division. Last season, we went to 8 countries. On this episode of Around the World on 8 Plates, we're going to a new country. Where are we going next? Let's find out using the Honey Monologue. Hello everyone, we're going to another country. Which country are we visiting? Well, here's the Honey Monologue. So sometimes if you want to eat tuna, you have to can it, put it in a can. So we call it canned tuna. Canned tuna. Doesn't that sound like the name of a country? Well, if you still can't figure out where we are going to the country of canned tuna. 3, 2, 1. Today, we will introduce a 4-day itinerary for Canada. We will also learn about geography and history. We will also cook a dish from there and interview someone who has lived there before. Our itinerary first takes us to the beautiful city of Vancouver. Then we will spend a few days in the beautiful town of Yellowknife. After landing at the airport, where should you go and what should you do? Start your trip by going to the city of Vancouver on the first day. Begin your day by going to Canadaplace. It's a building with a roof that looks like or resembles sails and is a place for many international events. It is also called Komagatu Maru Place. Why? It's history time. In 1914, a steamship called the Komagatu Maru traveled from Kolkata in India to Hong Kong, to Shanghai, to Yokohama, and finally to where Canada Place is now in Vancouver. It was carrying Indians who wished to move to Canada. However, only 24 people were allowed to enter, and the others had to stay on the ship for 2 months with little food or medicine. The steamship was forced to travel back to India, and many people died while traveling back. This incident highlights the dark past of racism in Canada, since just a year before, in the year 1913, Canada had accepted 400,000 immigrants from Europe. Now, let's go back to the itinerary. After Canada Place, walk 15 minutes to Gastown, a historic site since it is the first neighborhood settlement in Vancouver. Today, many fashionable and hip people work and live there, but the most famous landmark there is a steam-powered clock. Over there, you can also try Japadog, which sells Japanese hot dogs. Imagine eating hot dogs with ebi tempura or yakisoba on top. Then take the metro from Waterfront to Vancouver City Centre Station to get to Vancouver Art Gallery. You will find many interesting pieces of art inside. Outside, you can find lots of food trucks and you can just enjoy your lunch sitting outside the building. The art gallery is also on Robson Street, the most famous street in Vancouver for shopping, where I got some souvenirs such as ice wine and maple cookies. Yum! Walk along Robson Street for 20 minutes as you find cherry blossoms in bloom in winter and yachts all year round. After the 25-minute walk, you will reach Stanleypark, the biggest park in Vancouver, where you can see trees that are older than your grandparents. view the skyline of downtown Vancouver, go exercise, go biking, feed some ducks, enjoy views of bridges, and get a history lesson by admiring totem poles with figures and symbols carved by Native Americans. One of the most common practices in Native American culture is swaddling. This is when a baby is wrapped in a blanket tightly. We now know that newborns, they spend 2 to 3 hours crying every day. Different cultures use different methods to take care of babies that are crying. Some lift the baby to the shoulder, some pat the back of the baby, some rock the baby back and forth, some give pacifiers, some sing lullabies, lullabies. And again, in Native American culture, swaddling is the preferred method to stop a baby's cries. Whatever method you choose to comfort, calm, and soothe your baby, it is a good idea to know what kind of cry it is. There are 3 kinds of cries. A basic cry starts softly and gradually becomes louder. This shows that the baby is hungry. A mad cry is similar to a basic cry, but it is louder. This is when a baby is angry or unhappy. Finally, a pain cry begins with a sudden, long burst of crying, followed by a long pause or gasping. Now for the second day, fly from Vancouver to the city of Yellowknife. Make sure you bring enough clothes because during winter, minus 27 degrees is considered a warm day in Yellowknife since temperatures can go down to minus 34 degrees or lower. Yellowknife is most famous for its northern lights, but you never know when they will appear. So, we suggest spending at least 5 days over there. Lucky for us, we got to see the northern lights on our first night. It's geography time as we learn how these beautiful lights are formed. First, solar storms from the sun give out huge clouds of electricity. Then some of these are caught by the Earth's magnetic field, especially in the north and south poles where the magnetic field is stronger. The electricity enters our atmosphere and run into atoms and molecules in our atmosphere, and heat is produced. Particles that hit oxygen molecules give off a green color, whereas those that hit nitrogen give off a pink color. Therefore, most auroras are green and pink in color. Now, back to the itinerary. If you get to see the northern lights on the second day or night, don't worry because you can do many things on your remaining days in Yellowknife. You can explore the wildlife and see a moose. You can go to restaurants that actually serve moose meat. You can go to a museum and learn more about the culture of the indigenous or native people. You can just play around in the snow. You can go walking and exploring. You can go on a Northern Light tour once more. And you can go dog sledding and enjoy the breeze and the cute big dogs.
你太靠近我了，那个狗。真的吗？干嘛那么靠？
The Northern Lights, dog sledding, maple cookies, walking in beautiful parks, museums, food, history, Native American culture. Being the second largest country in the world means Canada has a lot to show tourists. Our itinerary only takes you to Vancouver and Yellowknife, yet we have already seen lots of wonders. So now, just imagine and wonder how much more Canada can offer in terms of beauty and culture. In the meantime, check out the next section as we read more about this country in the form of a postcard. To learn more, read this country profile in the form of a postcard. I have presented a lot of information about today's country, but now it's time for a local to talk about his or her own country. So let's welcome our special guest and learn more about this beautiful and wonderful country. For this episode, we will have two special guests. Our first special guest is actually from France. And since a lot of people in Canada speak French, why not interview someone from France? And then our second person who is going to be interviewed is from Canada itself. Let's see what they say.
Hello everybody, my name is Edwige. Your teacher asked me a few words on our politics in France. We are a country under what we call the Fifth Republic, which is supposed to be a stable model of governing the country. We choose the President of the Republic every 5 years. The President can choose his Prime Minister that builds the government for him afterwards. To change laws, they need the agreement of two institutions, the National Assembly and the Senate. The government needs the majority of the National Assembly, also elected every 5 years by the population, usually right after his own election. Our president is currently very unpopular and lost 2 times in a row the majority of the National Assembly. When the Prime Minister wants to force a law anyway, without the majority of votes in the Assembly, he can use what we call a famous article, the 49.3, to bypass the Assembly. Either the opponents of the Assembly let it down because the Senate is also in favor of the President today, so it doesn't count really for anything, or they made a request against the 49.3. If the majority of the opponents agree, the government falls down. It is the first time in the last 60 years that we face this situation. Tonight, we will know if the latest government is going to fall down or not, as we face a 49.3 to adopt the national budget of 2025. You can Google the result tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Hi!
Hi,
Could you introduce yourself?
my name is Peggy. I've been teaching English for 20 years, I think.
And you used to live in Canada, right?
Yeah, I did.
Where did you used to live in Canada?
I live in Vancouver.
What are some of your memories?
I remember Stanley Park, Greenville Island, Robson Street, and Oak Ridge Mall.
What's so special about Stanley Park?
It's a big park, and then you can ride bikes there, and the scenery is quite nice.
What about Blah Blah Island? What's the name of it?
Greenville Island.
Okay.
It's an island that comes with the public markets and the other stores that you can have a little shopping there.
Okay. And then what? Robson Street is also for shopping, right?
Yeah, it is. It's the main street for shopping.
Oh.
Take two!
Take two! Okay, so could you introduce yourself and can you tell me what it's like living in Canada?
Okay. So my name is Katie and I live in Vancouver, BC. So this is the west coast of Canada, and I live in a little townhouse with my boyfriend and dog. into wet and rainy season right now, so a little bit chilly. We're kind of like getting ready for darker days now.
Yeah.
Which is always fun. But yeah, life here is generally quiet, peaceful. Feels a little bit like retirement, maybe.
And full of maple cookies.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. For some reason, I don't really like the maple syrup. Maybe a little bit too sweet for me.
But you know how much I like maple cookies, right?
Yes, but that's why I'll be bringing you next time I go back to Taiwan.
Yeah! And I'll finish a box in a day.
Oh yeah! Oh my god. Okay, maybe I'll pack how much did I bring you last time?
I think 4 boxes, 2.
4.
No, you brought I think 2 boxes, and I was like, that's not enough. And then you asked Lester to bring even more.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm doubling that next time.
Thank you. All right, so today's topic is about working or doing business across cultures, and I would like to know, and I would like to ask you some questions about working in Canada. So one of the first questions is, working in Canada as a professional, what are some of your tips, and what's the consensus? Like, what do people agree on is like one of the more important is one of the most important things when it comes to working in Canada?
What is the most important thing? Okay, so let's start with communication.
Yes.
I think being able to work as a team is really important, and to be able to have good conversations and discussions about what you're working towards together. Those sort of things are usually very important. So this can be verbal communication, so if you're in a meeting with somebody, and also written communication in like emails or in meeting notes, that sort of thing. So yeah, just I think being able to communicate well is a really big one. What else is there? I think being able to, again, kind of sort of ties back to communication is
Yes.
Being able to give frequent feedback to others.
Yep.
So that doesn't always mean that that person's doing anything wrong, but rather you want to help each other succeed, right?
Right.
So if you notice that there's something that could be done differently, for example, or you notice like a little bit of a kink between the way that you work together, giving feedback and making it a very open dialogue is also important.
So giving feedback is part of communication, because the style of communication is very important. You need to communicate in a professional manner, right? There's no I blame you, you blame me. It's about giving constructive criticism or words that can help improve whatever you're doing.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly.
Okay. Thank you for the answer. My next question is, are there any nuances that only Canadians know about, working in Canada?
The nuances.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so for this will be different between companies and industries, but I think we tend to have a more casual work culture. So I would wear this to work, for example, just like a hoodie, and nobody is going to be expecting you to walk in with a suit or like be really dressed up. So yeah, just something simple is fine. And especially if you're working in front of the desk all day, nobody's going to be really judging you for the way that you dress.
So something like this, like I look like a Canadian lumberjack, somebody chopping wood in the Canadian wilderness, right?
Yeah, so that, I don't know. I feel like for the lumber industry, they might have other safety gear for you to put on. But yeah, that's a very, very nice, very Canadian, very nice nod to the Canadian.
It's like I've covered the basics.
Yeah, like yeah,
That's yeah. All right, thank you
Yes.
for your compliment. And let's go to the fourth one. So, there are some aspects in being professional, and I would like to ask you to rate these aspects from 1 to 5, or would you rather 1.1 to 3.72 or 1 to 5?
1 to 5. Let's make it simple.
Okay, let's make it simple. Okay, so how important is adaptability and flexibility?
4.5.
Okay, why?
Oh
Deja
my
vu.
gosh. I have to use I have to use 0.5s because I don't know, it's hard to rate those things. I think it's different every day, but yeah, in general, if your workplace has a lot of fast moving parts, in a project, for example,
Yep.
you have to be willing to be flexible, and being open to negotiations to
Okay.
adjust the expectations.
So speaking of negotiations, that's my next question. How important are negotiation skills?
Yeah, so maybe 4.5 as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it also just kind of depends on your role. But in your day-to-day, you're gonna be talking a lot with people. If you're working on something together, and so being able to have like an open discussion and bring up valid points to make a case for why you think something is a good thing to do.
Right.
Those are really key skills to have.
I think another thing about negotiation skills is you have to know your place. If you've been working for a company for only 1 month, I don't think that's the perfect time for you to voice your opinion because you're still observing what's going on, right? But if you've been there 6 months, a year, I think that's when you can start voicing your opinion and saying, okay, I think this needs improvement, or I can give suggestions for this aspect of the company.
Yeah, that's a fair point. You for sure, like when you start out within a company, take time to learn the ropes, get to know the people and the culture as well.
Yep.
Before like jumping to a conclusion about what needs to happen.
Right.
I think that gets you a lot farther in your goal to like make changes if you
Yep.
want to. But negotiation also, like another component of negotiation comes down to having leverage, right? So
What
even
do you
in
mean?
the interview,
Yep.
leverage is like how much. Think about like if you are playing poker, like the chips that
Okay.
you have,
Yeah.
right, to put on the table. So even in the interview process,
Yep.
you should be negotiating for like a better offer
Yes.
for the job. And you can do that if you know that you have XYZ experience, or if you bring this and that value to the company.
Yes.
So using those things as your leverage to negotiate for a better offer
So-
is also part of the
So
job.
leveraging is like knowing what your strengths are so that you can get what you want from the company. Right.
Yeah, so being confident to bring that to the table.
Right. Okay. And finally, punctuality. How important is punctuality?
Punctuality would also depend on the job, and so for me, I don't need to like clock in at a certain time. I just need to be able to show up to work and be responsible for the tasks that I am doing. And so, yeah, it may not be as important for my role to show up on time, but for like meetings, for example,
Yeah.
I would have to try to be on time.
So
Or yeah,
so you can rate it around 1.5.
sure. Just don't show my boss this.
Okay. All right, let's go to the last question. So, So you've been working in Canada for quite some time. What milestones have you achieved in Canada? You can talk about your experience, like all the way from Taiwan to Canada. Like, what milestones have you achieved?
Yeah, I think the biggest milestone is really just like moving my entire life from one place to another, and then going from one industry to another, because we started the same school in Taiwan, and then I worked a few other schools before I okay, so first I moved from Taiwan back to Canada, and then I also went from teaching in schools to now working in a corporate setting.
Yes.
So there's a lot going on there. Yeah, it's not always easy to kind of like make the switch, especially if what you are doing now is very different from what you did before.
Right.
Yeah, so I think it's really about like reflecting on like what really is important to you. And if you have an interest that you want to really pursue, that can be a good direction too.
And I think you also need some courage, because if you want change in your life, you've got to make tough decisions. And when you make tough decisions, like transferring from one company to another, then it takes a lot of courage. So I'm proud of you for having that courage.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Katie, for your time. I hope my students learned some things about working in another country, the culture, some tips, and hopefully they can have a better future wherever they choose to work.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Perfect ending.
Now that we've learned about this country, it's time to start cooking. What are we cooking today? Today, we are making creamy Canadian clam chowder. Let's start with the list of ingredients. So for today's dish, you'll need 1 onion chopped, 1 potato chopped, 1 carrot chopped, 2 celery ribs, 2 tablespoons of butter, 500 grams of clams, some vegetable stock, 2 cups of milk, salt and pepper, and 2 tablespoons of flour. So now let's go to the recipe itself. Step 1. In a pot of boiling water, cook the clams. Then, in another pan, stir-fry the chopped onions, potatoes, carrots, and celery in butter or oil. When the vegetables are soft, season with salt and pepper. Add the stock, milk, and the clam soup. And then, in another pan, mix the butter with the flour. The next step is to add the butter-flour mixture into the soup so that the soup can become thicker. Cook for another 5 to 10 minutes and serve hot. And there you have it, the recipe for creamy Canadian clam chowder. If you need more information or a written recipe, please continue watching. Now, in case you need it, here is a written recipe for today's signature dish. And this concludes our trip to New Zealand. Where are we going next? Stay tuned as we once again travel the world, learn about the culture of another country, and go around the world on 8 plates.